7 o'clock.
I'll be here a couple minutes late.
I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Start with introductions. Sandra, if you don't mind, or if you don't mind going first.
John Moore.
John Decker.
Michelle King.
Jeffrey Morrison.
Thomas Bukevich.
Tom LeVay.
Michael Kelly.
All right. We have to do a vote for the acceptance of the old meeting minutes.
All right, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of January 4th.
Seconded.
Oh, all in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
All right.
All right, and I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of January 6th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor of accepting the minutes?
So we should have minutes for the two hearings, the 11th and the 13th of January. Lorraine, you said there was choppiness
Yeah,
in the
I'll send
video?
those, I'll send those around, they're not complete. It's choppy at the end, after I left.
Okay.
So we'll address those when, after we get them. Alright. So I would make a motion that we hear the candidates, potential members for budget committee for the 1-year position. So basically, if you people don't know, what happened was we should have had a 2-year, a 2-year open position, and the 2-year open position was missed. So we had a shortcoming. We checked with the state and figured, and they told us to just basically nominate a person for a 1-year term and the next election.
So John, how did that even happen? Because that's a big mess up.
So how
It
did
was
it happen?
overlooked?
Right, it was just overlooked in the. so
I
when-
mean, I didn't catch it.
But how is it overlooked that there's an entire seat open on a board? Like, do we know when this happened?
Well, it happened when we went to put basically the open positions up, you know, so.
What do you mean? Like, no, I mean, like, when was this discovered?
I discovered it right before the election,
Okay.
when I was looking through and saying, there's more people here than, there's more people running, and then I started counting heads, and I'm like, okay, so there's like, Michael's not coming, you know, it's like,
It was the
there were
Michael
the
seat,
people
right?
running
Yeah.
that added up to more than, there should have been one person open based on Michael leaving. You know, but we had everybody who was here on, you know, running, and then a couple other people running. So that's how I discovered it.
Did Michael resign?
No,
Oh, okay.
he ran his full 3-year
Okay.
term. Actually, or whatever, yeah, no, actually, his was a 1-year term, I think, last year.
No, he ran a 2-year term.
It was a 2-year term, but he ran the whole thing.
He fulfilled a commitment, yeah.
He never intended to run again, and he joked at one point that he believed in term limits, and he thought 23 terms was enough.
Right, so it was either like the spot that Bob or Jeff filled in, you know, whoever they replaced.
Right, yeah.
Right, that's where it got missed.
And so,
It had nothing to do with Michael.
so my reading of the state law on budget committee, the RSA for budget committee, is the members of budget committee are supposed to be elected by the townspeople.
Correct.
Not appointed by people on the board or people from the select board or
Well,
something like that.
Right,
And-
except when there's a vacancy.
Right, but the vacancy is at election day. The vacancy
It-
existed on election day. It's not like this was the middle of a term and and someone got sick or something and we needed to fill it temporarily.
That's correct, but, which is why I'm like, okay, it was before the election, what do we do?
Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
figured it out, but because it was past printing of you know, past the registration period and printing of ballots, basically, that became history.
Right, but it's not like we didn't have enough candidates on the ballots to fill the open positions, so I don't
We had
understand
no-
why the
We had
town
no
monitor.
candidates for a two-year position.
Well, don't we just take one, the next highest person from the other one?
From why? Which one do we take them from? The 1 year, or do we take them from the
Yeah.
3
The
year?
one that has the most candidates and the one that got the
How do,
most votes.
how do you figure that? How do you make that judgment?
You take the people that are running for a full term and you say, are you
Or do you take
satisfied
the
getting
one that,
half a
or do you
term?
take the one that's running for the 1 year term, cause that's what we're gonna fill?
I mean, I guess that's a question for the moderator.
Right, so, no, it's not a question for the moderator, it has nothing to do with the moderator. And that's why we asked the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State said just appoint, like you would for a regular vacancy.
Or you leave the seat empty for a year, theoretically.
Right, but
But
that's
there's no
not the
reason
right thing
leave
to
a
do.
seat empty.
Well, there's no reason to do what he's suggesting.
Right, there's no
Yeah,
reason to do
I
that.
think appointing.
Well, the reason to do what I was suggesting is that it's a democracy and the voters are supposed to vote somebody into the board.
But there was no 2-year spot. There was no 2-year spot, and we've already put it out. We have candidates here that are willing to fill the seat for a year. And then next year, when we vote again, you know, lesson learned, we'll double check, triple check, and make sure that everything's right, so that way we don't make this mistake moving forward. I mean, I think this is the right thing to do.
Well, it's
That's what
apparently the
the
only
Secretary
thing we
of
can do
State
at this
said to
point.
do.
What's that?
That's what the
It's-
Secretary of State.
Right, it's
said
the
do.
legal
So
thing to
that's-
do.
Yeah.
We're doing the legal thing.
It was a mistake, so let's.
Right.
Right.
Right, there's, right, all we can do
I
is
just
move
want some
on.
background information.
For
Yeah,
sure.
That's.
I mean, it
that's-
was a mistake. I mean,
I mean, do we know where the mistake was made? Like,
it just wasn't accounted for. I mean,
Right.
everyone missed it.
You know, like, yeah, there's
right,
a
but
few
this could
people that-
potentially be a way that someone can circumvent the voters. I mean, we could just, whoever does this, you know, could in the future just be like, well, you know, there's 2 seats available,
Correct.
and then, oh, hey, oh, there was a third one, let's
But
all
you know
vote on
what?
somebody.
But you know what? We've learned from our mistake, and we're gonna move on and make sure that it doesn't happen again.
But we don't
So-
even know
but
where
because this
the
was an
mistake
accident, we're gonna make sure that it doesn't happen with malintent moving forward.
But if we don't understand how the mistake was made, then like, how do we stop it from happening in the future?
I don't know the
Like,
answer to that, Tom.
if we end up like putting someone in that got like 2 votes in the election, like, I mean, where's the accountability for that?
I mean,
All right, well, let's move on.
all right.
Okay, so anyway, I was making a motion to, first of all, did everybody here sign in as a guest? Please do. Yep,
So John, do we need to hear from everybody? Because we kinda heard from everybody a month ago at candidates night and we heard.
We're
well,
gonna hear
I,
from everybody
I think we
tonight.
should, so let me make my motion.
Alright,
I make a motion that we hear from the interested parties who want to fill the 1-year vacancy, well, the vacancy for 1 year. And then we do basically a ballot vote amongst ourselves.
a ballot vote or we're gonna,
No, I think we should just do a ballot vote. That's the way we always used to do it when we had vacancies in the past.
that's not how we did it in the fall. In the
I-
fall, I
that
just
is-
made a
you are-
motion that
yes,
we appoint
you are
somebody and
correct.
we voted on it.
Right, you are correct. I'm making this motion. I'm going back to the way that we used to do it.
Point of order, you can't do,
Gene,
you
Gene.
can't do a ballot vote in an open meeting.
I agree with Gene. I
It's
don't
the
think
law.
that's
I can
appropriate.
quote you the case law.
I think if people are gonna try to
We-
overturn the results of an election and vote
Just to make
against
the
the will of the
motion
people, it
clear.
should be a public vote, and we should know how they vote.
Should,
I make a motion that we vote to appoint.
Tom, I mean, you weren't done making your
I'm not
motion,
making-
right?
I'm-
He wasn't done yet.
yeah, I'm making my motion, then we can discuss it. All right? So the motion is to do a ballot vote amongst ourselves.
Well, your motion is to hear
Should I,
from the.
damn it, Tom, let me make my motion. I'm sorry, but, you know, please let me make my motion. The motion is to do a ballot vote amongst ourselves after we hear what the candidates say. That's the way we always used to do it in the past. We would write their names down on a piece of paper, and then we would tally them up.
It's illegal.
I agree, it's illegal.
It's illegal. I can quote you the case law.
Oh, Jean,
When do I speak out then?
Even if
we'll
it-
have an opportunity to speak. Can we just
Even
talk
if it
amongst
wasn't
ourselves and try to
illegal,
discuss this, please?
It's very greasy to try to have a secret ballot vote where you can vote to overturn the election results and put someone in who got 23 votes
It's not overturning
not
any
overturning
election
anything.
result.
We had an election, there was a number of
There was
people
no
that were signed up to
election.
be
There was
candidates.
no two-year
The
seat.
people of the town voted on those candidates, they're all here tonight, and the totals were Brent Tweed got 544 votes, Doug Bates got 420 votes, Mr. Sell got 87 votes, and Mr. Friend Gray got 23 votes. Brent Tweed got more votes than all three of those other people combined, and we're sitting here discussing about having a secret ballot amongst ourselves to overturn the results of an election. This is an attack on democracy.
I have a question.
No, it's not.
It's not, Tom, there was.
Not
I have a
more than
question.
5 months
All right.
ago, we had Mr. Doug Bates here and Mr. Michael Kelly here, and they both asked to be appointed.
For the motion.
I would like to understand why we're doing it with a secret
nobody's made a
ballot,
second
when
yet.
5 months ago it was perfectly fine
Nobody
for
has
us
made
to
a
not
second
have a
yet.
secret ballot, and we
All
appointed
right, so we have a
someone.
second.
We have a second.
On the motion.
Now we can discuss it.
Yep.
Go
I have a
ahead.
question. How many candidates do we have here tonight, potential candidates?
I believe 4.
4?
Three?
3?
Three.
Okay. I
Who's
was just
the,
curious.
can everyone say who they are? I don't know who this person is.
Sorry, should we come up to the mics?
No, I just wondering who, I wanna know who's not here.
This is a public meeting, right? Aren't we supposed to be?
Right.
I'm just asking a
Let's-
quick question.
This is a public meeting, but yes, so when you speak, you should come up to the thing.
Come up to the podium, right?
Sure.
Just wanna make sure I'm
Right.
doing this.
Since you're being addressed.
Yes, thank you. My name is Owen Friend Gray. I live at 162 Raymond Road.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor for
I
John?
think we should have more discussion about this. This is very
Go
important.
ahead.
Yeah,
Number
right,
one,
we're having
Absolutely.
discussion.
Number one, it sounds like it's illegal. Number two, that's not what we did. A few months ago, we had we had a vacant seat on this board, and Doug Bates came here to apply for a seat, and Michael Kelly came here to apply for a seat. And we had them come up and they gave their statements,
Right.
and then we discussed amongst ourselves who we favored, and then we made a motion to appoint somebody, and then we publicly voted
Right.
on who we wanted to appoint.
And I agree with you,
and
because
every-
that was the way the
Right.
motion was
That's what we
made.
did.
What was wrong with that?
Nothing was wrong with that.
Great, so
That
let's
is the
do
way
it
you made
again.
your motion. This is the way I made the motion today.
What is the motivation for doing this? Is it so that we can vote against the will of the people and
No,
not
this
have to be
way-
accountable for it?
This way, we're not making a motion to nominate one person, and then we're all voting yes or no on that one person. That's what you did last time.
Do you wanna
We
do-
have 3 candidates.
How about we have the vote out loud then?
I had another question, not to interrupt.
John, will you amend your motion to have the vote
I
out
would
loud?
like to hear why Mr. Reed says that this is illegal. Because what
I would love
I'm
to know
reading
how
here
it
is
is
we get to appoint the person. How we choose that person is our choice.
Could we have Mr. Reed explain? I had another question too.
I would like Mr. Reed to explain.
When did the voting structure change? And if we are gonna be voting, is it just everybody on the committee gets one vote for one candidate and that's it? And then they're tallied up, or?
So it's 1 vote per per member.
Yep.
I guess if we have a tie, we would have to, like, re-vote or whatever.
And to answer your first part of your question, I was chair, and that was the first time I had ever been in a situation where that was the procedure. I haven't been on the budget committee a long time, I don't know how they did it before, but apparently the way we did it last time wasn't
Yeah.
the way that we usually do it.
Okay,
That's-
that's why I was asking.
It was, yeah, I
That
mean,
was
I
my
didn't-
only
I didn't know
exposure to
either.
it,
You know, I
was
didn't,
how we
yeah.
did it last time.
Right. I don't think it happens very often, it's just like a,
John, can you clarify if that was ever done when there was 3 candidates? Because you potentially have somebody who doesn't get a majority vote seated.
That's why I was asking that question of how it was
Well,
structured.
Whether it's a tie or not,
right,
that
so how do
person
you-
doesn't have a majority
Yeah.
vote.
I would imagine that each committee member gets one vote for a candidate.
Right,
I-
that's exactly what I'm saying, each
Yeah.
committee
My
member.
question is,
gets-
was that ever done when there was more than 2
Doesn't make any difference.
passed?
I don't know if we ever had 3, I don't recall there being 3 people in the past.
Could we look it up and possibly hear Mr. Reed?
Well, I'm waiting for,
Oh, yep.
when he's addressed, he can tell us
Sure.
why he believes it's illegal.
Mr. Reed, you may speak.
Douglas Land,
No, wait, Michelle is chair.
yep.
No one was speaking, and he
Jean.
was waiting.
Please, go ahead,
Ju-
thank you.
For a little background, I was on the Budget Committee, and we did have a secret ballot. At that time, I didn't know that there were rulings and litigation that forbid that. This is Douglas Lambert versus Belknap County Convention. The courts, I will read verbatim part of the hearing, of the decision. The opinion clarifies several issues under this important statute. In absence of a specific statutory authorization, public bodies may not take votes on pending issues by means of a secret ballot during an open session. And the case goes on to say, it supplements that, but I'm sure you don't want to hear the whole thing. And there were some other things about the names must be disclosed to the public and so forth. There has been more litigation than this. I'm not an attorney, but I did pull this up quickly as a reference to what I said when I said it, and the fact that I was involved as a board member in the past. We did it wrong, and it flew, but nobody knew better.
Right.
Now we know better.
Okay, yeah, right, because I was probably on the board at the same time as you.
Oh, really? I think it was
We
Mike.
did it by this ballot.
We did.
I know we did.
Yeah, I agree.
So-
We did, but it's wrong.
What RSA is that?
It comes under 91, they say. I didn't bring the whole case, it's lengthy, but that was the pertinent quote from the decision. And if you want to look it up, it's Douglas Lambert versus Belknap County Convention.
Well, I would just
If
like to read the law itself.
The court interpreted the law, and they used a reference 91A, which is a lengthy law.
91A is the right to know.
Would it make sense
Is
to,
it what?
Right to know law.
would it make sense to, vote on the motion? Go from there.
Well, no, because this is pertinent.
What is the statute that says we appoint
If it's in fact an illegal
members?
motion, then it doesn't matter what we think, it's still not legal.
Right,
Well, right, but let's determine let's,
I would say we get to the
the bottom of that first.
bottom of it. We already, we've already had a problem with an open seat in the ballot issue.
Yeah, I wanna make sure it's done
I'd say we
right.
do our due diligence and take 5 minutes to,
Well, John, if you're
To
okay
look it
with
up.
amending your motion to not have a secret ballot, and instead we just say who we want to vote for, then it's not an issue, because we can
that's,
do that.
okay,
I think
alright.
we should look at the statute that says we appoint a person to see if they need a majority.
I did find, oh, majority.
That says, what does it say here?
My internet's not good
My
here.
kind of, my Wi-Fi's not strong enough here, or my.
Mine either, I can't get on the internet.
This conspiracy, they're blocking the internet.
There is Wi-Fi, it's just too many people are on it apparently.
They powered out just to make sure.
You know the password.
No.
Can't get on the guest.
No, the guess is probably, yeah, if you got like more than 4 people, the guess goes down. It'd be nice to pay for a bigger and stronger internet. It costs money, so it's gonna happen.
There's two. Actually, there's three.
Alright, here we go. In municipalities where members at large are elected, vacancies shall be filled by appointment by the budget committee. Persons appointed to fill vacancies shall serve the next annual meeting, at which time a successor shall be elected or appointed to either fill the unexpired term or start a new term as the case may be.
It doesn't say how we vote on
It is
them.
part of 3215, section 7. It doesn't say, I mean, basically, we determine how we. So, I mean, I'd be willing to amend my motion to make it just a roll call vote And if there's a tie, then we do a re-roll call vote excluding the, you know, to just on the tied people. Use it
think
just
about
for
that?
tied people.
I think that's a good
Certainly
compromise.
sounds better than a secret ballot.
That's a good compromise, I think,
I
right?
would say so.
What does everybody else think?
So are you withdrawing your,
I said I will amend my motion. I'll amend my motion to that.
Tom?
I'll second your amended motion.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
This position is not for the full 2 years. This will be until
Just-
town meeting and
right.
election next.
Right, so then next year, there should be the three-year positions that always come up every year. And then a 1 year to fill the remaining 2-year seat.
And I think we should hear from the people and have a chance to ask some questions before.
Oh, God, yeah, that was
Yeah.
part of my motion, my original motion. Sorry, that was part of my motion.
All right, so all in favor of John's motion amended? Aye. All right. So, oh, those opposed? Did you abstained?
I'm abstaining.
Okay,
I think we
Tom
already had an
abstained.
election for this position, so.
okay. Who would like to go first for the candidates? If you could come to the table, tell us a little bit about them, yourselves, and answer a few questions.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Brent. Is the microphone on?
I don't think so, but.
All right.
Is it green?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on, it's
We
just
can hear
not,
you.
it's going to the TV.
Okay.
Oh.
My name is Brent Tweed from Maine originally. I have married, have 2 kids, both in the school system here, one at Co-Brown, one here at the Nottingham School. I went to the University of Maine, Orono, graduated chemical engineering. Right out of college, I moved to New Hampshire 2001 and got a job at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, where I worked until 2018 in the nuclear engineering department. Worked on overhauling the Navy's nuclear-powered submarines. Currently in the operations department at the Seabrook Nuclear Power Station. Just running for budget committee. I was recruited by one of the members here on the board to run. Just hoping to run, and I've heard a lot from various members in the town, just that taxes, you know, the increase have grown a lot over the years. Someone said even that it's doubled since in like 10 or 15 years. I don't know if that's accurate. But, you know, I mean, I'm just essentially looking to help to keep providing the essential services that taxpayers want, but also addressing concerns of community members who've seen taxes increase. You know, of course, in an inflationary environment, we're probably going to see some increases in the budget, but I think we need to hopefully keep it constrained because people's incomes don't necessarily always grow at the rate of inflation. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Tweed?
I do, if nobody else does.
Somebody's gonna start.
So have you, read the budget, New Hampshire budget law?
Not recently. I've not.
Not recently or never?
I mean, who knows? Throughout the years, I mean, I've been involved. You know, I've been on a budget committee before when I previous town, and well, I guess that was in Maine, so it wouldn't have been the New Hampshire budget law. You know, but not that I recall, honestly.
I would like to ask just a show of hands on the budget committee here. Who here read the New Hampshire budget law before they were on budget committee?
Or on budget committee?
Before they were on budget committee, who here read the New Hampshire budget law? Yeah, that's what I thought. Gene. Yeah. So I think pretty much everybody who gets on this budget committee has
It's a
not
valid-
studied budget law.
Right, but, you know,
Yeah.
we have contention here, so,
Right, I know. So, yeah.
you know,
Are you familiar with, the, situation in Croydon, New Hampshire?
Yeah, I've seen some of the posts on the Facebook.
Yeah, that was a town meeting thing, right?
Yep.
And I guess it didn't have anything to do with budget committee.
sure did.
Sure did.
Did it? It was a vote at town meeting. Right? They had town meeting and only 20 people.
Did you have another question for Mr. Tweed?
I was just gonna ask you what your feelings were about it, you know, based on what you know about it.
I mean, I've just read a couple of the news articles about it. I mean, I don't really have any opinion about it. I mean, it has nothing to do with me, so.
Well, I think it's important to understand, from the standpoint of how they just slashed the budget. And
I mean, I think that wasn't done by one person, it was done by a town meeting, it was
No, I-
so it was, you know.
And to be fair, Tom, there are people online that are saying that we slashed the school budget here when we cut it from an 8.7%
Tom, can I ask
increase
you a
to
question?
an 8% increase.
Just, we're asking him right now. I know you want it, but every time you.
No, we're having a
interfer-
discussion. I
Well,
think
well,
some
we
questions.
haven't-
No, we're
Why-
not having a discussion, we're asking,
We're not, he's asking a question to the candidate,
Yeah.
and the candidate should be answering the question to the board.
Right.
If the candidate wants to ask you a question, then it gives you time to speak. But to get through this process, we don't, if you're gonna keep interfering on every time somebody asks a question, we're gonna be here for a long time.
Well, John, I'm a
So-
board member, so I have time to speak. And
But you're
gonna have to
rude
get
to other
used that.
members.
Okay.
Right, you'll have time to ask your questions, that's fine.
I have a question for
Yeah.
Mr. Tweed. So you were on the budget committee for your town in Maine?
Yeah,
How long were you on the budget committee?
it was
then?
just a 1-year appointment.
Okay, and, how was your experience on the committee? What'd you think about it, and is there anything that, you're proud of that you did on there that made an impact on the
I mean,
town?
it was a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
I mean, no, I don't think there was anything that stands out.
Okay, just curious. Go ahead.
Of all the committees and all the things to be elected for, you know, you got zoning, you've got planning board, you have budget, I mean, there's other elected officials and boards. Why'd you choose budget?
Oh, well, like I said, I mean, I really wasn't planning on running. One of the members here asked me to step up and run. You know, there was some openings. I mean, I think budget committee is an important, you know, it's an important function. It's one of the more important ones. Of course, you have selectmen and school board, so I would rank the budget committee as like the top 3 important ones. Not that the things that the other boards do aren't important, but it's one of the more important things.
I have a question. I was going to ask all the potential candidates as well. So, you know, like you said, inflation's at a 40-year high. Some people are looking at, you know, the cost of inflation this year is going to cost the average home about $5,000. It's the equivalent of paying your tax bill twice for the more wealthy, you know, landowners and whatnot. Which ways do you think we could be able to save on the budget, or maybe shave the budget? What areas might be possible just to keep this palatable? I think it's going to be a really hard year for a lot of people in town. So which ways do you think we could keep expenses down in the town?
Well, I mean, I'll have to, you know, study the budget and look at it carefully. I mean, honestly, I haven't done a thorough review of the budget at this point to really say what areas, you know, we'd be able to cut. I mean, like I said, most likely, you know, what we're gonna see is, you know, as we've seen year over year, we've seen increases, and I think that's probably likely to continue. So it won't be a matter of, let's go cut the budget, it'd be a matter of, you know, how much is it gonna increase year over year from last year? That's what I expect, and especially, like I said, especially in an inflationary environment, you know, like, you know, in previous years, we've seen inflation rates maybe 2.5%. We've probably seen budget increases of at least that much, if maybe it was more than the rate of inflation. So with an inflation rate of 7.5%, let's say, well, I don't know, right now I think it's 7.5%. That doesn't mean it's going to be 7.5% over an entire year. But you're probably looking at, you know, something more than a 2.5% increase potentially. I mean, I don't know. That's of course for the budget committee to vote on. But
So this is like a volunteer position. You volunteer for anything else in town? It seems like people like living that.
yeah, I mean, I do volunteer for the fire department. I'm a member of the fire department, EMT, and I'm actually a firefighter where I work at the Seabrook Station. So I do need to attend Fire 1 school here and get certified. But I am volunteering in that capacity, just in a probationary area. We've done a lot of blood drives. The fire department's hosted. I've volunteered for a lot of the blood drives. Yep.
Wake up late at night, drive people to the hospital or something, ambulance or?
Yeah, I mean, I am an EMT, so, you know, both driving the ambulance and providing patient care. I've been on the fire department now
Sounds like some
almost 2
great
years.
values.
Good.
My radio going off Good timing, Bob.
Sorry about that.
Look at that.
Pager.
Sorry about that.
So, can I go?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so how do you balance, basically budgetary service, budgeting for services, versus, where, expected cutting, potentially increasing places that need services, that, basically the, let me go back here a minute. So, the role of the budget committee is to assist voters in the prudent appropriation of public funds. So how do you make sure that you look to keep things prudent?
Well, I mean, again, I have been on a budget committee before, so there's obviously a process. Usually you have a town administrator who's helping prepare the budget for the budget committee. The various town departments are preparing their budgets and providing that input to the town administrator. But as a budget committee member, your job is to review all that information, looking to see where the increases are in the year-over-year budget, just making sure everything looks prudent. And again, it's the budget committee member is a sort of a our job is to ensure that the money's being spent responsibly before the budget gets voted on by the members of the community in the town meeting. So I think you just got to look at it prudently and make sure everything looks right.
All right, does anybody else have any questions?
I do. I have curiosity. How do you balance your obvious concern with taxes and with the will of the people, et cetera, with your choice of suing the town to overturn an ordinance that was passed at a local town meeting?
I'm certainly willing to talk about that. I'm not really sure that it's pertinent to being on the budget committee, but I'm willing to make a couple of statements. I have heard some comments on social media. I think social media is, it can be a good means of communication, and it can be bad because you seem to get the most vocal people who comment and don't necessarily represent everybody else. But I did win that case, in fact won. So I think, if anything was frivolous, it was probably the people who supported the ordinance. It was, again, ruled it was unconstitutional. It was illegal under New Hampshire Constitution, New Hampshire law. I was at the town meeting when it was passed. I made those statements. I asked for the opinion of the town lawyer. The town selectman did not allow the town lawyer to tell people it was illegal, so people did not have that foreknowledge when it was a pretty clear-cut case. The town lawyer should have made it, let people know that, so the town didn't incur those costs. So I don't feel like I'm responsible for those costs. I feel like the people who pushed that ordinance is responsible. Essentially, it banned all corporations in town from releasing any amount of toxic contaminants. And I've made these statements, and people have not disagreed with this. Basically, the town itself is a corporation. The school, the highway department, the police, the fire department, it is a corporation. And under that ordinance, they were banned from releasing any amount of toxic contaminants. It applied to any other business in town, lawn care, Liar's Paradise, every business. And every action releases some finite amount of toxic contaminants. So, they made the argument that it was about town waste dumps, but that's, if you read the operative language of the ordinance, it was way more broad than that. So, it was really a very, very broad ordinance, in my opinion, that basically banned everything. And then, I guess, allegedly you were to come in and enforce it the way you felt was appropriate. Again, the judge, if you read the judgment, it was summarily defeated, thrown out, so.
I'm concerned that, I'm just interested that you chose to do that, to overturn an ordinance that was at a town meeting, and that ordinance does stand in other towns. Thank you for your opinion on that.
Yet again, if it was enforced, it banned every single business and corporation, including the town. Wouldn't be able to operate vehicles. I don't think it's really very controversial to say that vehicles release toxic contaminants. Your heating system, your furnace releases toxic contaminants. You pass an ordinance that banned the town from releasing you know, from operating vehicles. If you read the plain language of the ordinance, that's what it did, yet you're still defending it.
Sandra, wasn't that the one where at town meeting, the people that were, the people promoting the people that were the ones that wrote the ordinance, weren't they admitting that it was unconstitutional and like illegal, but they wanted to do it anyways? And I think multiple people got up and said, this is just gonna result in the town getting a lawsuit and it's gonna get thrown out. Why would we waste our time and money on this? But it got voted in anyways. So it's not like it wasn't a completely predictable result.
Do you know what the total cost of the town was of the lawsuit?
I don't have that. I mean, you probably, John Moore is the selectman, you probably should ask him.
So your fees were 40,000?
Those aren't my fees, those were lawyer fees. I'm
Right.
sure the town had similar lawyer fees that they had to pay their own lawyer. So, I mean, I would suggest, talk to people who support the ordinance and ask them why they supported an ordinance that was clearly illegal, that was gonna cost the town money, and it was stated at the town meeting, don't do this, because it's illegal and it's gonna cost the town money, yet, you know, it still got voted on and was pushed by the people that supported it. You know, it was a very extreme ordinance, like left-wing, you know, environmental ordinance that should never have been passed at the town local level.
I was
Should never
asking
have been
about the
passed.
fees that you asked the town, you asked the court to order the town to repay, which the
That's,
taxpayers.
well, that's right. So the judge, my lawyer, you know, who represented me, asked the town to pay for his fees, based on the public benefit. Basically, the public benefited from my lawsuit, which in fact is the case, because again, the ordinance banned all corporations from releasing any amount of toxic contaminants, and I've already stated all the actions that release toxic contaminants. It would have banned all businesses from operating in the town of Nottingham. So it did have a public benefit. The judge ruled in my favor and did grant my lawyer the fees that he paid. I did not receive one penny personally from that lawsuit. It all went to the lawyer's fees.
Yeah, John.
Thank you.
I spent numerous, in fact, I spent numerous hours of my time on that. So if anything, it was a net loss for me in that regard, because I did not get reimbursed for my time.
Yeah, John, can you imagine how hard it would have been to sell the Route 4 property for an industrial park?
Does
if they
anybody
said you
else
couldn't do anything?
have any
Well, I just
questions?
want to answer Carol's comment about how much it cost the town. I believe we heard from Chris Sterndale, town administrator, that the town was not trying to dump a lot of money into fighting this thing, because they knew it was obviously illegal. You know, it was illegal, it was unconstitutional, it just wouldn't hold any merit, and so the town was not going to be paying a whole bunch of lawyer time to go try to fight this in court.
To fight an ordinance that was never enforced, and the town had no intention of enforcing it.
Then why pass it?
It cost us $40,000.
So why would we keep?
This is
So why would we keep around an ordinance that we wouldn't enforce? Could it be to try to drive away any industrial development like the stuff we're getting on Route 4 that benefited the town to $1 million in that sale, and will increase our tax base? That's why they wanted to keep it on there and not necessarily
I think
enforce
that
it.
selectmen can rescind an ordinance.
I don't know. They can't.
So.
I didn't say that they would.
It's also interesting that the judge, did not reimburse your attorneys for all their fees. If the court order says that some of them have said they.
Can we move this along? Can I do this?
Well, I think the reason is because my lawyer wanted to be very thorough in his
Right.
representation, and he made all the legal arguments
In the interest
that
of
were
people's
applicable.
Yeah,
And some,
Attention. I think we're getting really off topic.
not right now, please.
so just to shortly answer that, because
Sure.
it ended up going to the Supreme Court, so he made some arguments in the Supreme Court that he said, okay, well, this isn't really relevant because you were arguing and it's this at the Supreme Court capacity, so we're not going to reimburse you for that portion. So it had nothing to do with the viability of my case or the viability of my argument. He just apportioned it and said the town shouldn't be responsible because you were making arguments here in the Supreme Court, and we're not going to reimburse you for that. So there's no, nothing more to it than that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any more questions, or can we move on to the next potential candidate?
But thanks for going first, being on
Yeah,
spot.
thanks, Brent. Mhm.
Oh, might take a question from the front.
Because we're in a meeting right now and we're trying to hear the candidates. Does anybody want to go next?
Everybody, I'm Owen Friend Gray. Like I said earlier, I live on 162 Raymond Road. I'm the house with the giant crazy chicken mailbox. That's me.
Oh,
So you guys now all know exactly where I live. Yep.
your style.
Yeah, well, you gotta see, you gotta,
Transparent.
yes, you gotta like my, my wife and my mother's style. I do not have the artistic gene. That had nothing to do with me. I just made sure it stuck in the ground and didn't go anywhere. That's my job.
That's on.
So I'm just gonna bring you through. I'd like to give you some background on myself, some personal history. I'm gonna bring up a little bit of my, my technical skills and what I think I can bring to this position, what my current roles are in my current position, and how that affects, I think, how I would be able to assist this board, and then just some conclusionary statements. But I want to start off by saying that I've lived in Nottingham my entire life, except when I went to college for 6 years. So the house with the giant chicken mailbox I grew up in, and then moved to the west side of Nottingham for 5 years, and then built my forever home on a plot right behind the giant chicken mailbox house. So if you ever go up French Road, which is that class 6 next to it, and see a big field with a bunch of pigs running around in it, that's me. My wife and my 2 kids, we live there. My 2 children are in the Nottingham Elementary School system now. We built this house with the full intention of never leaving. So I'm very invested in this town. I have been my entire life, and I always will be. I know the people of this town. I know a lot of the people in this town. I've grown up with a lot of people in this town. When I get into this building, I have to remind myself that this is now called the community center. It's still the old school in my head, because this is where I went to school when I was younger. But over the last several years, I've transitioned my career into one of public service, and I've found it to be tremendously rewarding. I find it to be something I really enjoy, and I can certainly tell you I'm not doing it for the paycheck. So I find these opportunities to give back to the community to be really worthwhile, something that I really like to do. So from a technical standpoint, I'm a professional engineer. I have my license in the state of New Hampshire. I was trained at UNH. I worked in the private sector for 6 years, and then transitioned to the public sector, where I've worked as a assistant city engineer, and now the highway chief engineer for the city of Manchester, which means I deal with anything basically within the right-of-way that isn't water or sewer. So roads, bridges, dams, sidewalks, streetlights, traffic signals, drainage structures, all of that falls under me. That's all within my purview, my department. I run a 30-person engineering team, and we manage about $70 million a year in capital improvement plans, and about $2 to $3 million a year in an annual operating budget. So all of that responsibility comes back to me. I manage all of that. The bottom line on all of those dollars is me. Currently, I am down 2 engineers, so anybody who's an engineer and wants to work in the city of Manchester, I'll hire you. Just gotta have a PE, please. So I'm actually doing 3 jobs right now. Not trying to have a sob story here, but what I'm telling you is that I am managing 3 jobs currently. Out of the 4 professional engineers we're supposed to have in the office, I'm doing 3 of those shares work, and that's the $70 million with the 2 to 3 annual operating budget essentially being handled by the other engineer. So making budgets, preparing budgets, sticking to budgets, understanding the implications of a budget, working within the confines of a limited restricted budget on a large scale level is something that I am very familiar with. I am very comfortable with. It's what I do on a daily basis. It's my profession. It's what I like to do. It is genuinely what I enjoy doing. I'm gonna kind of fly my nerd flag here to explain that I think Excel is the greatest program that's ever been made. I absolutely love spreadsheets. I love numbers. I love working within a confined budget to try to optimize and come up with the best possible outcomes for the people I'm serving. I get to give back to underserved populations in Manchester on a daily basis and do things to improve their lives in ways that they might not understand or have an appreciation for in terms of what it means in terms of a budget or the cost, but they can see what their tax dollars are doing. They know what good is happening. they can understand why their street's getting paved. And when they don't know why their street's getting paved, they call me, and I'm the one who answers it. I'm the one who answers to the public. I'm going to go before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, which is a 13-person elected board in Manchester that manages their roughly $300 million annual budget between the school system and the city system. And I'm going to explain to them what I'm going to do with the roads, why I'm paving what I'm paving, and why I'm either paving or not paving their streets, and why that portion of the politics is no longer a part of what I do. I don't believe being a public servant or working in a public servant capacity allows for, especially on a budgetary standpoint, allows for a political sense or a political ideology. You are given a task when you are on a budget committee. You are given a strict limit on what you can and can't spend, and you are told to optimize and maximize the benefits for the public with that limited amount of funds that you are given. We could always do more with more money, but we understand what that means to people. So you have to understand how to step back, how to look at the big picture, how to get the best bang for your buck, more or less, to optimize your systems. I mean, just an example, right now in Manchester, we employ paving techniques that have not been used in Nottingham ever, because we've discovered that in the long term you can get lower upfront capital costs, you can get longer O&M life out of your roads, and you can be continuing to drive on better performing, higher operational roads for longer periods of time. I've had conversations with Chris Sterndale about this. We've talked actually about creating an advisory town road committee that I'm trying to get started with him, so that we can try to have some professionals and some like-minded geeks like me try to work with the good folks that work in the town facilities and the DPW buildings and the salt sheds, and say, hey, if this is what you're working with, if this is your skill set, we think this might be able to work. And they can come back and say, well, we don't know how to do that, this or this. We can say, hey, well, let's show you this, or why don't you teach me how you guys operate this? Why don't you show me how you do this? Oh, I saw this in another town. Maybe we can optimize, maximize your equipment. Maybe we can better work on your salt distribution. Maybe we can do a better job of planning on which roads we're going to pave, when we're going to pave. All of those things are things I love to do and things I want to do. I actually interviewed for and almost accepted the job. I was offered the job for the DPW director back when it was called that. It was going to be the road agent plus the manager of the transfer station and all of the buildings in town. I had met with Chris several times about this. They offered me the job. Unfortunately, I just couldn't make it work financially. At the time, the pay cut was going to be too big, but I wanted to work in my town, to give back to my town, to try to better my town. This is home for me. This is always going to be home for me. And anything I can do to focus on long-term budgets, long-term maintenance, long-term planning and optimization for the town, that's better for me, and it's better for everybody who lives here. So that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I want to do. So that's why I'm here tonight, and I appreciate you guys taking the time and listening to my diatribe, and be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Owen, appreciate that.
Well, I got some bad news for you. If you like Excel spreadsheets, we have a hell of a time trying to get the data in an actual spreadsheet. It comes in a PDF.
Oh, I can do that. The conversion softwares that you can get online for free are pretty good. You can do it.
PDF.
You can get there.
Scan it.
It's brutal, but you can get there.
So it sounds like you've been responsible for putting together budgets.
Yes. Yeah, I put together the annual capital budget for the engineering division every year.
Right, so I see that as different from what we do here, in that we have the different departments create a budget, come forward, present their budgets. And, you know, we're not creating the budget, we're analyzing it and going through it and whatnot. So that's quite different than what you do. The experience is, I'm sure the experience is really good. how do you see yourself fitting into a committee where budgets are already done and they come forward and, you know, it's a whole different.
I probably didn't explain it that well. So because I'm responsible for the budget doesn't necessarily mean I'm the one putting together every part and piece. So my different engineering staff actually put together different aspects of it and parts of it for me, give it to me, and then I will sit down with the deputy director and the director and all of the other chiefs. There's 8 of us that submit different CIPs, and we will work on coming up with a collective capital improvement plan that we will present to the mayor for her to put into her budget. So I do create them, but I didn't explain it well enough. We also go through the process of vetting them, trying to work within an anticipated and expected budget, and then modifying afterwards when we find out what our budget is really gonna be, and then making cuts, changing programs, optimizing what we have. Yep.
Yeah, I guess to just follow on with that, basically, our task is to assist the voters in the prudent appropriations of public funds. And, you know, it's like, how do you make sure that we're putting together prudent appropriations?
I think one of the biggest things is you have to remove yourself from the equation. I think it's one of the hardest things to do. It's one of the things I've been learning as a public servant over the last several years, is that your opinions and your desires are not what's relevant or important here. You need to look at what's in front of you and try to determine what is the greatest good that can be done with the funds that are available at your disposal, or what is around you at that time. So I would say that the way I would make sure that I'm trying to remember the exact terminology used, but it was the most, advising the public on the most, what was it? Prudent. Advising the public on the most prudent use of funds would be to use strong data and analysis to show benefits and cost-benefit analysis on maximizing the benefit to the greatest number of people with the funds and availability of equipment, items, staff, things like that that you have.
It kind of sounds more like what the town, when they put together their budget, those are the things in their head that they do. And talking about long-term planning and stuff, that's more on their side too, because they put together the budgets and what they want to do, and then they come to us, and then our role, the courts have said that the budget committee's role is that of a fiscal watchdog. And so our job is to decide, you know, how much can the taxpayers bear? So it is even if this is a necessary expense, can the taxpayers take an 8.5% increase? What if there was an 8% increase the year before? How much is too much before people start losing their homes? You said you have 3 jobs?
No, I currently have 1 job.
Okay. You said something
He's
about-
doing the roles of like
I'm
3
I'm
jobs.
doing the roles of
It's
3
like
jobs,
filling in for
sorry.
3 people.
You're busy.
I don't have either of my primary project managers that I'm supposed to have.
Gotcha. Do you have time for budget committee?
Oh, absolutely,
It's a lot.
because I will make time.
It's a lot. Okay. That was gonna be my question too.
I have to fill in for Michael Keister. He was the one that was always like, can you actually show up? 'Cause apparently there were attendance problems, but we haven't
Yeah.
had that problem.
I guess I'll ask you the same question that I asked Brent. So with inflation and you know, people in town really struggling, I mean, some folks go to the gas station, they see the gas prices and it hurts. What areas in the town budget or departments do you think we could trim or just be really careful on to take care of people that are really getting shellacked this year?
Unfortunately, I haven't dove into the budget. I haven't looked at the numbers. I haven't seen what levels we're appropriating to what different departments, what levels of staffing we have, what buildings we have. I can't answer that. Sorry, I don't have a good answer.
Good.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Why this board? Because you were explained quite well, but.
Yeah.
Have you thought about other boards, or is this?
I have, actually. I've been asked to be on the planning board a couple of times. I interact with the planning boards a lot. I was the primary reviewer of plans for the city of Rochester and in Manchester for 2 years before I transitioned that to somebody else. Reading and reviewing site plans and subdivision plans is what I do. It's my bread and butter, but it's not what I get passionate about. It's not what I get excited about. Budgeting and forecasting and long-term management of funds and trying to decide how best to manage what can be done within a reasonable and productive way. As Tom mentioned, what kind of strain can the public take to still provide the best benefit for them? That, I feel, is a real benefit to the public, so that's what I like to do. That's why I think this board would be the best fit for me.
Follow up on John's, so why the last minute interest? Why not get your name on the ballot? Because you get a lot more than 23 votes if you get your name on the ballot.
Well, depending on actually which one you look at, I either got 23 or 69 because I got written into 2 different locations. One of them I was trying to run for and one I wasn't. But
Still though, we got people here with 544 votes.
yeah, it's a very true point. And if I had been on the ballot and I had been running earlier, perhaps I would. It was something I had been trying to decide for a while and debating for a while, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make the time commitment. That was the biggest thing. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. And I decided as I was mulling it over that it was something I was excited enough about. It kept sticking with me. I kept coming back to me that I wanted to do it. So I realized if I wanted to do it this bad, I'll make the time. And then I went to sign up and realized I was too late.
So I guess the real question is, why should people on this board go against the will of the voters and overturn the votes and appoint you with 69 votes instead of the person who got the highest number of votes at 544?
I would say that the will of the people isn't relevant in that sense because that's not what that represents.
But we had an election for.
We did not have an election for the 2-year, correct? Isn't that what the debate was?
There was a number of people that declared their candidacy for budget committee,
Tom,
right?
right?
And
It's
people
not his
voted
fault.
for ones that they liked.
It's not his fault.
It's not his fault.
So
I'm
why do you
just
keep bringing it
asking.
up?
Well, because people are coming here and they want to get appointed, and I'm just, curious if there's a rationale for why we should
Told you why
appoint
he missed
someone.
it and why it wasn't there, it should be good enough.
No, I'm asking if there's a rationale for why people would want to get appointed over someone who received more votes than
Well,
them.
how is he supposed to know what the people, like,
How's that relevant to
that's
us?
not, that's,
You
he
know?
doesn't know
How do
that
you
opinion.
know if the ballot had been written correctly, that another
Yeah,
person had been there.
it's all
that
hypothetical at this point. Let's just move forward.
Hakuna Matata.
Does anyone else have any questions
Did
for?
you come here tonight on your own, or did somebody from this committee approach you about coming,
No, this was me.
like Mr. Tweed mentioned?
No, this is me.
Does anybody else have any questions? Owen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Doug.
Thank you. I'm Doug Bates, 30 Lamprey Drive. I'd like to begin by going into some detail about my qualifications for this role. I'm a retired executive. My last role was as Chief Marketing Officer for a publicly traded company. I was also on the company's board of directors. There I had direct experience developing and managing budgets of the size and complexity that our town operates at. Before that, I was an entrepreneur. I started 2 companies. My second company did well, and we sold it to a much larger company. When I was able to cash out on that deal, I decided to reward myself by retiring early. That's how I happened to have the free time to volunteer for this role. In my former life, I pretty much worked all the time. Early in my career, I worked as a statistician in the field of marketing analytics. Complex spreadsheets do not faze me. From this part of my history, I think most people might infer that I know a thing or two about money, but there's more. I'm a published author. My book, which is in the genre of philosophy of self-help, and which is my publisher's second best-selling title, was praised by best-selling author Stephen Batchelor for making a difficult subject accessible. I know how to analyze and explain complex topics topics more complex than those associated with the town's expenditures. I have a bachelor's degree from Dartmouth College, an MS from the University of Pennsylvania, and an MBA from Cornell University. However, as Mark Twain once said, try not to let my schooling interfere with my education. I suppose from the kind of biography I just presented, some people might assume that I had an affluent upbringing. I did not. My father was killed in an industrial accident when I was 2. At that time, we lived in a tiny apartment over my great-uncle's garage. My mother worked as a secretary. During summers when I was very young, my mother sent me away to live with an aunt and uncle so she didn't have to pay for daycare. Until I was 8 years old, their house did not have indoor plumbing. I gather that some people are motivated to be on this committee because they believe taxes are too high, and they want to do something about it. That's not my motivation, and I think it represents a sorry state of affairs that might be held against me. My motivation is I see the town has a tendency to get itself into legal predicaments, some of which has caused the town to get sued. We've already talked about one of those today. I don't think having to pay lawyers is a good use of taxpayer funds. In addition to the creation of legal predicaments, I also notice that some other towns in New Hampshire have managed to create a lot of drama. 2 towns I'm thinking of in particular are Croydon and Grafton. I think lots of folks in town fear that Nottingham has the potential for the same kind of drama, and they don't want it, and I don't want it. With regard to town budget committees and the possibility of legal predicaments and drama, RSA 32 says the purpose of such committees is, quote, to assist voters in the prudent appropriation of public funds, end quote. The New Hampshire Supreme Court further clarifies this, saying, to provide a committee with special knowledge to oversee and analyze the expenditures of the various town departments and districts. In this manner, the electorate, which would ordinarily be without the detailed knowledge necessary to vote intelligently on certain budgetary problems, might be given sufficient information to determine the annual amounts necessary to properly manage town affairs. Notice here that the key words are prudent appropriation and amounts necessary to properly manage town affairs. Those are different from the idea of figuring out how the town can figure out how to tax as little as possible. I think this difference needs to be kept in mind. Failure to do so risks lawsuits and drama. New Hampshire law is loaded with mechanisms for controlling taxes. Town employees can be fired for going over budget. Voters in the deliberative session are prohibited from increasing the budget recommended by the Budget Committee by more than 10%. Voters can even prohibit the Budget Committee from proposing budgets that are more than 4% higher than the year before. Meanwhile, there are no mechanisms for preventing cuts to appropriations necessary to properly manage town affairs. There's nothing that takes inflation into account, which is a pretty serious oversight. The proper functioning of our town shouldn't be held hostage due to the mismanagement of the economy by the federal government, or supply chain failures, or wars going on in faraway places, or any other external reasons. There's also nothing to prevent the Budget Committee or the voters at the deliberative session from reducing appropriations by ridiculous amounts. Right now, we're getting to watch a crisis going on in Croydon over this. But there were warning signs that Croydon was liable to crises like this one, such as when the town got rid of their one-man police department and they made their fired officer strip down to his underwear and walk home in the snow. I suppose that it's an international pastime to complain about taxes, but it's also similarly a pastime to complain about insufficient government services. The key takeaway from that is that people like to complain. Meanwhile, the hard and often boring work of even supposedly simple things like running a small town government commonly goes unappreciated. And sometimes that's at best. An extreme version of complaining is fear-mongering. One sees wild exaggerations about how much or how little things are going to cost. One sees wild exaggerations of the impact of taxes on the town, such as this false rumor that we have people here who are losing their homes because the taxes are so unaffordable. Meanwhile, Homes here are being snatched up for a third more than they were just 3 years ago. Clearly, home buyers are not being driven away by our tax rates. Our tax rates are typical of similar towns in New Hampshire. Not only that, many of the home buyers are attracted to our good school, which many rating agencies rate as among the best in the state. This all dispels the notion that our taxes are ridiculous and out of control. If that were true, people would be voting with their feet to get away from Nottingham. Instead, they're bidding up housing values. And just between us, who wouldn't want to come here? Of course, individual circumstances vary. We absolutely have folks in this town for whom taxes are a struggle. In 2020, Nottingham had 44 households who qualified for tax exemptions. Out of over 5,000 people, 44 households is not a lot. Our ratio is similar to other towns, and our exemption qualifications are in the middle of the pack. That said, with our surging rates of inflation and asset appreciation, I think we'd be well warranted to review our current tax exemption qualifications and to consider enhancing them. But to dig deeper on this question, is it the job of the Budget Committee to do anything about the small fraction of our citizens for whom the town's property taxes are a serious problem? A review of state law pretty quickly shows the answer. Nope, it isn't. The committee's job is prudent appropriation of amounts necessary to properly manage town affairs. We have quite a few laws about providing tax exemptions and abatements to people who are unable to pay. None of those laws mention any role for the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee has no warrant to pursue objectives different from the objectives set out for it by law. It's legally reckless for members of the committee to do so, as it has potential for getting the town sued. For example, suppose a few ideologues cut out some necessary part of the budget. It's not a hypothetical situation. Towns have done this in the past and ended up in court. Ending up in court and the kinds of drama that have happened in Croydon and Grafton after tax-cutting efforts have run amok are what I'd like to see this town avoid. Spending taxpayer money to pay lawyers to defend ideological agendas is a pretty questionable use of funds. And while drama may not tax wallets, it certainly taxes minds. As I mentioned earlier, I write books on philosophy. One of my favorite 20th century philosophers is Friedrich Hayek. Hayek once said, "The curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they imagine they can design." What Croydon and Grafton have demonstrated to us is how little some people know about what they can imagine they can design for what works for a town. We should learn from their example so we can avoid their mistakes. What happened in Croydon and Grafton was driven by an activist political minority composed of a certain species of utopians. So, if there's anyone like that in town who should happen to encounter my speech tonight, I'll present a philosophical argument to contemplate. The foundational argument for doctrinaire libertarianism is the non-aggression principle. Here's the counter-argument. People should rightly consider it to be an act of aggression to have taken away from them public services that have been around so long that even their grandparents were able to take them for granted. I think this little thought experiment gives some insight about why there's been so much drama in Croydon and Grafton and how we can avoid similar drama here. Like the inscription on one of the benches in State Park says, lots of us here already think that Nottingham is our little piece of heaven on earth. I'd like to be part of helping to keep it that way.
Thank you very much, Doug. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your brief remarks. If you're interested in where the courts actually said that the Budget Committee has a role as a fiscal watchdog, which you seem to think is a fake thing that I'm putting out there,
Be nice.
the actual statement is from the judge in the courts in Brentwood School District versus Brentwood Budget Committee in the Rockingham Superior Court, docket number 218, 2015, CV 150. If you go read that, you'll see how the judge decided that the Budget Committee did have the right to cut the bottom line of the school district and said that the Budget Committee has a role as a quote-unquote fiscal watchdog and has to figure out, you know, what the taxpayers in the town can bear. And I also take issue with the fact that you called it a false rumor that people in town are losing their homes over taxes being too high. Yes, no one has been forced out of their home at gunpoint because their taxes are too high. It takes years before we get to that point. When people become in financial trouble because they can't pay their taxes or their mortgage where the escrow money is in there, they look to sell their house. They are essentially forced to sell their house and relocate to either another place or to a smaller house with less of a tax burden. Are you arguing that if you are forced to sell your house that you've not lost your home? Is that your argument?
I'm arguing that there is an RSA that allows those people to go to the Board of Selectmen and ask for an abatement.
Right, and we've had a record number of abatements, I've heard, in the last
Is that
2
true,
years.
John?
Nope, that's what I heard from Ben Bartlett, who is the chairman of the select board.
Was,
So,
but, no, I sit on the board, I don't think there was a record number.
was there, how many abatements were there?
For houses, I wouldn't say, like he said, I wouldn't say in the course of the whole year, there wasn't even 50.
50 is a lot.
Yeah.
You know how embarrassing that would be?
Well, I mean, if you take, out of percentage wise, I'm just saying out of percentage. I mean,
is
I
that per
felt
year,
for all those
John?
people, I'm just not saying, I mean, I guess, I always thought a larger number over 100 might be something to be more of a concern for me, but.
And John, correct me if I'm wrong, the abatement process, that's
I mean, I can get the exact numbers
a
for you.
short window, right? It's after the second tax bills come out, and it's a short window of like a month and a half in the beginning of the year,
You can
right?
apply for an abatement just because you disagree with the assessment. It doesn't
Yep.
mean that you're
Right.
being forced out of your house.
Yeah.
If you dispute the assessment, that's how you,
That is an abatement right
that's
there.
what an
Do you have
abatement
any
is.
idea how many are abatements because they're?
I can go back and look, I haven't kept an actual record on me right today, but, cause I
The
know
point
somebody
is-
asked the question.
The point is that our taxes in town have inflated quite a bit in the last few years, especially since around 2017. And it is a significant expense on people in town, especially people on fixed incomes, retirees, things like that. And just because no one comes with the sheriff and takes their house from them at gunpoint does not mean that people aren't losing their homes when they cannot afford to pay their
Yeah,
property
I thought
taxes.
I covered that with what
No,
I
you
said about tax
people losing their
exemptions.
homes is a false rumor that's being pushed around.
And I also said that
That's a
we had
false
44
rumor.
people who had tax exemptions, and I think we should consider enhancing the qualifications for those. And those are the people, the retirees on fixed incomes that we're talking about.
Okay, so, and how do we make up the money from that?
We tax the rest of us more.
So taxes go up even more?
Yep, mm-hmm.
Okay, so Doug, when you came here about 5 or 6 months ago, back in, I think it was like
November.
October, November, I had asked you about the tax increases that we've seen in the last few years. Taxpayers had just swallowed an 8% school budget increase, and this is after years of many increases that everyone in town has noticed. And I asked you about this, and you said, quote, "I haven't really concerned myself with that." Now, would it be fair to say that you're a wealthy individual?
By some standards, sure.
Yeah. Do you think there's any chance in the next 5-10 years that if property taxes go up 20-30%, that you'll have a problem paying them?
I personally know.
Yeah. So if the if the budget committee has a role as a fiscal watchdog, and it is our goal here and our job here to be checks and balances on the spending desires of the town and the school, how are you gonna represent the people of this town that have trouble paying their bills and are concerned about taxes getting too high if you literally have not concerned yourself about taxes being too high, and it will never be too high for you?
Well, it's also very important that these same people get government services. It is a trade-off between the two.
Mr. Bates, would you like to go before the Board of Selectmen and ask them to pay your tax bill? Would that be something that you would be like, yeah, I'm okay with
No.
that? Yeah.
I wouldn't like to do that.
Okay, well, in a sense, sir, you're asking other people to do that by saying there's no limit to the amount of
I never
spending.
said there was no limit.
In-
There's prudent appropriation.
Fair enough.
Mr. Bates, do you believe in democracy?
Yes, I do.
So why should we appoint you to this board over the candidate sitting behind you who received the highest number of votes, over 100 more votes than you in the election?
because they're not apples and oranges, apples to apples comparisons. One was a two-person election where people could only vote for one candidate. The other was a four-person election where people could vote for three candidates. So obviously, anybody who was on that ballot was going to get more votes.
Yes, but Mr. Bates, you have the lowest vote total of anyone whose name was on the ballot.
We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about this
Right,
this.
it's irrelevant.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
Mr. Bates. What do you feel you can bring to, I guess, the budget committee in a shorter version? Like, you know, like, I feel like we have a good mix here.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so how do you think you'd fit in on the budget committee?
You know, I think I bring pretty good analytical and explanation skills and ability to do research.
And you, I'm sorry, did you say you were retired?
I'm retired.
Okay, so you have a lot of time.
Yep, used to work all the time, now I don't.
Okay, thank you.
There's been a lot of scaremongering done on social media, I hear, in the last few weeks here, about people moving here from other states and trying to change the way things are done here. And I don't want to get into another discussion on a lawsuit against the town, but, you know, rich retired executive moves here from
Okay,
Boston.
but does he have, we have a question.
I moved here from
Not
Glen, New
plowing his
Hampshire.
Driveway, it sues the town to get the town to maintain their driveway. That kind of sounds like trying to change the way things are here. I mean, do we want to have the same discussion about how much lawsuits cost the town, Doug? Because you told voters with your NottinghamTownsRoad.com that, you know, the town was already maintaining all these private roads and it's not going to cost anything because they're already maintaining it. And yet when we get the budget document here, I may actually have it right here. You know, you can go in here and you can go to the road department in here, and there's very large increases in salt and plowing expenses, and we have to hire new engineers to fix culverts on these roads. It seems that there's about $190,000 in new expenses in the new budget, and we have these extra notes and stuff in here that are not in the ones that are passed out. And they identify, you know, this spending is due to the new roads.
Do you have a question for him? I'm sorry, I'm just eager to get to a question.
Well, the question
I
is,
guess.
Doug, if you told people of the town that this private roads decision wasn't gonna cost us anything, and now it's costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars. It seems like a bad budgeting decision.
These were not private roads. That was the whole issue. Okay, so many of those roads have been.
I don't wanna get into town roads.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I was just telling John that. I don't want to get into the town roads again.
There was something that
you.
needed to be
Okay.
decided, and you're good at research and everything and figuring out stuff. And your conclusion that you told people in town and voters was that it wasn't gonna cost the town anymore, and it ended up costing the town $190,000 in the new budget. So, was it an error in the amount that you estimated it was gonna cost the town, or was it a lie?
I don't think he.
I think we need to move on.
Yeah, I don't think he knew. Like, I just.
We're way off task.
We are, Tom. And other people have questions too.
So, yes.
Well, no one wanted to stop discussion of the lawsuit for the crazy chemical trespass thing.
Long enough.
Well, you could have, Tom, but you didn't. Why didn't you say something?
Found it amusing.
Okay, so then you
Thank you. Okay.
And besides what you said, you know, again, there's all the other boards out there.
Well, you know,
Same question to everybody.
sure, yeah. I mean,
You know, I find it funny that it was just people that come up and
Yeah,
want
have
to be on
fit-
budget when there's so many other boards to be on.
well, I have
It is.
financial and forecasting experience. It looks like, you know, a place where I could contribute. Like the zoning, I don't know anything about topics like that, but this I do.
There it is, financial forecasting experience. But he said that the roads weren't gonna cost us anything, and it was
Anybody else have a
$190,000.
question?
So Doug, I mean, and you obviously mentioned the voters and imprudent appropriations of public funds, or assisting the voters in prudent, so how would you go about that?
So, you know, prudence is one of those little kind of mushy words. What is prudent? And people are going to have different opinions on it. And so the key thing is you've got to ask questions, you got to find out what the opinions are, and you've got to look at things from multiple perspectives.
I agree, it is a mushy word.
The same question I asked the other candidates. Are there any parts of the budget that you think we might be able to pare down for those people that are having a hard time with the annual tax increases?
No, I do not have any specific ideas on paring things down. I'm actually worried in the other direction with 8% inflation and our increasing population. We are probably going to have bigger numbers in the future.
Thank you.
I had a question, Mr. Bates. You mentioned federal spending a couple times, and you just said it right there, 8% inflation. Would your suggestion be to track that on a town level? Should we, in your opinion, should we be following that inflation rate with our town spending?
I would say we should probably forecast that we're likely to need to track 8%.
Okay.
Maybe we can figure out ways. I mean, a lot of the way these effects of inflation operate, there's going to be like a delay in the effects. So I don't think the coming year is likely to be all that bad, but I think a year or two from now, this is going to be a serious problem for this committee. Because, everybody's going to want pay raises.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah,
cost of
wages
Teachers are
typically
already about
lag behind and stuff like that,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Bates? Thanks so much,
Okay.
Doug.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. You wanna do it?
No, I mean,
Question, Michelle or John. With all the people in attendance, is there room for public comment, or is that not something that's?
I would like to hear public
I
comment.
don't know
mean,
the
it
rules
seems
on
like-
that.
These people
It
showed up,
seems like
they
there's
spent
a
their
lot-
evening, they should have a
It's
chance
not a
to say
requirement.
something.
it's not a requirement.
I
I
know, I
mean,
know.
they already had a chance at the voting booth, and we kind of know what the result of that was, but I'd like to hear from them since they took
I'd
the
file
time
a
out of their
motion
night.
for some public comment. I mean,
Seconded.
To be, I mean,
Okay, well,
I know it's
do we
late
wanna
and
keep it on a
everyone's going home,
time, or how would you, like,
time limited's fine, I would say.
should we do, like, how long?
3 minutes.
Till we get bored.
No.
Like,
Go on, we can ring the
All right,
bell.
we're already bored.
two minutes per person for, 20 minutes. That'll give 10 people a chance to speak. Does that seem like a good
I'm all right with
representation?
that.
I'm just throwing out
2
numbers.
minutes would be appropriate.
2 minutes.
Would their questions be to the candidates or what?
Yeah, that's what my question was gonna be. What are you proposing?
We're opening.
I think they should be comments to us. Is if it's to the candidates, then it's
Right,
2 minutes
yeah.
for a question, and
Yeah,
then everybody's gotta
right.
come up. That's
I
unworkable.
agree, it should not be questions to the candidates because,
And most of the people that are asking to be appointed were at the candidates night thing before the election and we had a chance to ask them questions and stuff, so I think it should just be addressing the people on the board.
That sounds fair enough.
Do we have to make a motion on that, or?
no,
we
no,
just-
it doesn't need to be a motion
Okay.
at all. It just, it's fine,
So-
part of our discussion.
We're gonna open it up for 2 minutes a person for the next 20 minutes. If anybody
Or-
wants
or
to.
less.
Or less,
Or less.
yeah, or
If
less.
nobody comes up, that's fine.
My name is Vicki Green. I live on Smoke Street. I have two questions. The first question is, because it is a public meeting, whether it's lawful or not lawful, my initial question is, why wouldn't you want transparency? Why wouldn't you want your votes to be open for us to see, since this is not the same as election where our ballots are secret. You folks are here because you were elected to represent us. Why shouldn't we have the opportunity and the ability to know how you're voting in regards to anything that's open to the public? The other aspect is too, I felt like Mr. Tweed was put on the line because he brought a suit against the town. And as a select person, you are a public figure, but you're also entitled to a private life. He saw something that got passed that in actuality, if I understand it right, would be detrimental to the town. And so he was put on the line for representing himself and bringing forth something that was wrong, as though this should shadow the approval to be appointed to this board. I find it good that he brought the lawsuit against the town if it was illegal, because he saw what was wrong. I heard him say he didn't receive a penny from the settlement. It sounds to me like it was something that needed to be approached, and on behalf of the town, as a private citizen, he did that, and it seemed to me, whether it's actually so or not, it appeared to me that he was being found fault with for doing good for the town. Those are my comments and my questions.
Thank you.
So I can respond why I proposed the, a secret ballot, because that's the way we did it in the past, and Jean would attest to that. And I just figured that was the fairest way for us to get everybody's, basically give everybody a chance to be voted on, as opposed to making a motion for a single person. That just didn't seem fair to me. I wanted to make sure that everybody got the opportunity to be voted against, or for, or whatever.
But John, I think you can see why people would be concerned.
It doesn't matter, Tom.
Voting to overturn it.
I changed my motion, it doesn't really matter.
Just explaining.
Does anybody else have any comments for us or questions?
My name is Romeo Dene. I live at 3 Ledge Farm Road. That's right at Nottingham Square. Because of an error in not including an additional position, the person with the highest votes that wasn't elected would have been elected if the error wasn't there. It seems to me it would have been. Why do we go through all this of appointing when we just should follow what the rule of the people was? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We don't need to adjust that.
Okay.
It was an entirely
Right,
different seat.
yeah,
that was
there's no need to.
They're all seats on the budget committee. The
That's
fact
not-
that they only
that's
say
not-
1 year or 2 years just because they're, what's left of another
No.
seat. But people are voting for people to go on budget
All right,
committee.
let's move on.
Hi, guys.
Hi,
Mary
welcome.
Bonzer. Been in town for about 45 years or something like that. Former selectman. This really troubled me that there was an error in the voting, because as a selectman, we were very, very careful about that. And I called up Bud Fitch up at the Secretary of State's office and got some ideas from him, and I also went online and did my own investigation. And by law, the question had to be on the ballot. Due to an election error, the question was not on the ballot. The Budget Committee can only appoint members to fill vacancies until the next election. Due to an election error, the next election was missed. The BC Budget Committee has no legislative authority to act as a super election commission.
This is the next election is coming up.
You have no right now because it was missed. You have no right at this moment. Let me finish. This presents a real legal conundrum. The Budget Committee cannot appoint, as it has no legislative authority to correct an election error. The Budget Committee could do nothing, that would be one of the choices. That does not solve the problem as discussed below. The moderator cannot appoint, as the question was not on the ballot. The Budget Committee or town could ask the Superior Court for their opinion and/or petition the Superior Court to hold a special election. We don't have a lot of options, as no New Hampshire RSA covers the situation. It would appear that the Budget Committee or town does not have the luxury of doing nothing, as the Budget Committee must be seated properly to have authority. The Budget Committee is not seated properly without a full board as a result of an election error. If the Budget Committee were to do nothing or to seat a member illegally, this could call into question every decision that the Budget Committee purports to make. Respectfully submitted, Mary Bonzo.
Okay, so Lori, don't hand it to me.
It's totally fine.
So Lori contacted the Secretary of State's office, and they're the ones that gave us this direction. So I don't know,
I talked with Bud Fitch, we go back a long way,
you know.
so I think
I was-
we've got a real conundrum
And
here.
plus, it was also confirmed by the town's attorney that this was the way to do it, so.
You know how a
if-
town's attorney's
I-
opinion goes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an opinion, exactly, it's their opinion,
Yeah.
but it matched what the Secretary of State's office said. So, if you are.
I'm just giving you
Mary-
my-
Mary, can
I'm
I
giving
finish-
you my
Let me finish my
opinion.
question. If you are going to sue the town, I will remove my motion and propose that we don't fill a seat.
I'm not about to
Otherwise-
sue the town, I'm just letting you know that if we are putting ourselves into a position that it could be raised. I have no intention of suing you guys,
So
trust me.
This was, you know, I'm just following the rules that what we were told, and the next election is next March. So we have a vacancy right now. It was not filled at the last election, so we have a vacancy.
There isn't any RSAs that cover this.
Yes, there is. It
No,
said, I
there
read it
isn't.
right here, 35-5.
Read them all.
I,
Yeah, 30, the one
sorry,
32, 15,
32-15,
7.
section 7.
Yep.
You know,
It doesn't cover a missed election.
not specifically, it just
No,
says vacancies
exactly.
shall be filled. We have a vacancy.
It's vague.
Vacancies shall be filled by
It's for
appointment by the
interpretation.
budget committee.
Yeah, it's open to interpretation.
Yep.
Right, it's
Like
the
most-
opinion of our legal,
I wish it was covered by RSA. but
Same.
This,
It would make it a lot easier for all of us.
Yeah.
right.
The election is to fill all the vacant seats. There should
Right.
not, by definition, be a vacant seat
There
after
shouldn't
an
have been a
election.
vacancy.
You're right,
You're
but there
correct.
is, but there's, no matter how it got there,
I mean,
there's
I could
still
see
a
it being
vacant seat.
I could see it being a conundrum if
Yeah.
there were not enough people on the ballot to fill all the seats, but we had multiple people on the ballot. It seems to me that the clearest thing to do, that most laymen would look at, is go, well, just
It
take the
doesn't
next
seem clear to
person,
me.
the next
no,
highest vote.
that's-
Doesn't,
That's not clear to me either. We didn't have a person running for a
for a
two-year spot.
two-year seat, it would make sense if there was a two-year seat, and then we
Well,
wouldn't be
some-
in this position.
If it was a three-year spot, it was
Right.
missed,
Can
or
you-
another one-year spot.
Can you
it was
think of a
missed.
reason that someone would say, boy, I like that person enough to vote for him for a 3-year term on budget committee, but I wouldn't vote for him for a 2-year term on budget committee?
That wasn't on the ballot, though.
It wasn't on the ballot.
Might have run.
But that's the argument, is that, well, you know, people would, you know.
And
maybe
what if
I'll
the
give him a
two-year,
two-year
what if the two-year term was on and someone wanted to run for a two-year term and didn't get to because it wasn't on the ballot? These are all hypothetical questions, or what if, but what's happening right now is that we're voting on a
Well, what's-
one-year seat.
What's not hypothetical is that there's a book down at the town hall, and for 2 or 3 weeks, people go down there and they write their name in there if they want to be on budget committee. And we had more people write their name in that
So
book to
you're
be on
using
budget
up
committee.
all the time of the people who wanna speak, cause
No,
you've
no,
had
no,
your
no.
say.
They all get 2
Actually,
minutes.
so,
For 20 minutes.
We can adjourn
Right.
this meeting.
All right, someone else speak.
Michelle?
Yes, ma'am.
That reminds me of something that Mr. Fitch did say from the Secretary of State's office, that it really is incumbent upon whoever would appoint, if it could have been appointed, that they follow the will of the people. That was very important. He stressed that very strongly. Other than that, but not in this particular case, I don't know, but you do want to follow the will of the people.
And I think we should note, did we mention that Bud Finch's position?
He's legal counsel for the Secretary of State's office.
Thank you.
and I don't know if that's who Lori spoke to. I have no idea who she actually spoke to.
Pertinent to this discussion on whether or not you should appoint, or the law that this lady brought up, she's saying that if the opening is due to election error, that's one statement of the law. I want to know if what you're presenting is a statement of the law, if somebody resigns because of illness or dies or whatever, and that's how you're utilizing that. So there's two differences here. One's got to do
You're right.
with election, and so if it's election error, as I understand the
Right.
2 points being presented, the one that was just presented is the one that needs to be followed.
I understand what you're saying, but the way that it's written for the RSA that I'm looking at right now doesn't specify each thing. It says if there's a vacancy, this is how you do it. It
But this
doesn't-
one does specify.
But
the-
we're looking at the law
That's
that
not-
we're,
Right, this is not, what, Mary?
that's not on
Handing us is not
anything
a law.
official, I mean, that's not a law, it's not on here.
It's
It's up
an
to
opinion.
interpretation, and it doesn't say anything specific, so, you know, I mean, trust me, I wish it did, because then it'd be a lot
RSA would be
easier,
real
you
nice.
know what I mean? Like, it'd be a lot easier for all of us right now, but it doesn't say that, it says a vacancy.
Well,
And
I think there's
regardless
enough-
of how that vacancy happens, it's
I
still a
appreciate
vacancy.
what you're saying and what you're looking at, but I also think that there's enough weight in what Mary presented to give it a lot more consideration than what's being presented here.
Thank you.
And I agree that it's the will of the people that should be followed because the error was made and it's an election error. And you still need to consider your populace. Again, you're elected officials. You're here representing constituency.
Yes, ma'am.
Constituency are the citizens of the town. We live in a republic, not a democracy. There's a big difference. A republic, democracy is different from democracy.
I appreciate it, thank you.
So I just would like you to keep in mind, this constituents' will is of utmost importance here.
Thank you.
All right, great, so now do we vote? Is there a 20-minute timer, or?
Other people wanting to come up? Oh, do we?
One
should we
last
let-
statement.
Okay, go ahead.
I think I'm supposed to speak.
You're,
Yeah, I mean,
you're making an argument over your interpretation of a law on a vacancy. This is not about a vacancy, it's about a mistake on the ballot. You didn't put another position on the ballot to where the next highest vote receiver would have been impaneled. It's not about a vacancy, it's about a mistake. You cite a law on vacancy, fine and dandy. This is not a vacancy, it's a mistake on the ballot.
Still a vacancy.
It's a mistake on the ballot.
but it's a
Still a
vacancy.
vacancy. A vacancy.
It's a mistake on the ballot you're taking care of, not a vacancy.
Okay.
Mistake
Still
on
a
the
vacancy.
ballot. And the ballot shows one person got more votes than another. That should be the person that fills the position. Why are you go so against that?
Technically, one person got more votes than all the other people combined.
Vacancy, definition of vacancy, an
mistake on the ballot.
unoccupied position or job, empty space. It is a vacancy, whether it's a mistake or not, the mistake part is irrelevant to the word vacancy.
Hi, Kathy Mayo from 131R Raymond Road. I am sitting here thinking that myself as well. We went to the ballot for an elected position, and the voters voted, and there were enough positions and enough people to fill regardless of the terms, the length of the term. And now there's a vacancy. And I have a problem with that because when we voted for an elected position, there were people on the ballot, and there are people to fill the position on the ballot. So I think we should go with the will of the people who went to vote for those people who are on the ballot, and you pick that person who has the most number of votes according to what the will of the people is. And now there's a vacancy because of an error that's past the election. That's my.
Thank you.
All right, can we move on to the voting, or? Sure,
Robin Marshall, 189 Old Turnpike Road. I have no problem with the first two candidates that came up, but I do take offense to the third candidate, Doug Bates. I hope you don't vote for him. One, because you'll never get out of your meeting, first of all. And second of all, I am a retired person, and because my husband passed away, I find myself with no income for 2 years because I'm not old enough to collect his disability or Social Security. I retired early, much like the third candidate, and I really take offense to him saying to someone like me, oh, well, so bad, so sad, just move out of town. So that's all. I don't have any problem with the first two, but I did take offense to the third one. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry for your loss.
Just a question. Is an option for us to look into the situation more at the state level and really get a definitive answer about what is the right thing to do? You know,
I'm considering.
I mean, I don't want to do the wrong thing
you know,
tonight,
that
you know.
We contact the Secretary of State again, and, you know, I agree, that's kind of where
You know, I really appreciate all three candidates coming tonight.
kind of.
I've learned a lot from them tonight that I didn't know. They're all.
I just want to finish hearing out everybody before I.
What was the question?
All right, sir, you're the last one. You got 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Hal
Of
Rafter.
course.
Thank you for taking public comment, by the way. I think going back to the beginning and the whole mistake that occurred, I would say that the entire committee is responsible because everybody on the committee is aware of how many members there are and everybody knows what's on the ballot. So I would just throw that out to
Well,
begin
we're
with.
not town employees. I mean, the town employees.
Volunteers.
Volunteers
here.
Wait a second. Why
Right.
would you say that the budget committee is responsible for putting the ballot together?
I wouldn't say that.
But that's what you just said, Hal.
Well, everybody's responsible for their committee. You all took an oath of office. We all
But
did
so
when we
are
served.
we-
Doesn't
we're
say
res-
we run the election.
Right.
Right.
You know, so where does
I
that
know.
fault come? Why would you say, why would you even try and say that?
Oh, Lord.
Well, I guess I would say there's been a lot of comments made tonight that are unusual or in the similar vein. But I'm just saying that as a committee, the committee, no individual person, but the committee, you know, is responsible for its existence and, you know, candidates, et cetera. That
Are you
just,
saying that we were
He's got
accusing
36
someone
minutes, Tom,
particularly?
so,
No.
or 36 seconds, so.
no,
Let him
no.
talk.
All right, just leave that aside. I mean, it's trying to identify who's responsible. I guess
Now
I'm
you're
just saying
making me
it's,
try to think who is responsible.
it's not worth going there. It's a shared responsibility. I think that's my point. Going to the election, there was a seat left off the ballot. We don't know who would have run. We don't know who would have been elected. The seats that were on the ballot, that's history. So whoever won, whoever lost, it's history. And as we sit here tonight, all of you folks on the Budget Committee,
Sorry.
you're the voters who are gonna select a person to appoint to the committee. And your job is really to pick the best person who's gonna represent the town and be an effective board member.
Unfortunately, your time is up for 2 minutes. I'm really sorry.
I would say it's not really like history. It's very, very recent history, and what we're very fortunate is that all three people.
I know, I'm sorry, we're just trying to
All
wrap
three
it up
people that
and-
want to be appointed were on the ballot, so we know what the townspeople, what the
Okay.
voters think of the
So
three
what are we doing
candidates.
next then?
So-
John, please.
I mean, I agree with what you said, Hal, pretty much, except for that it's the responsibility of the Budget Committee to know who's supposed to be on it. So, I would be willing to withdraw the motion and change the motion that we just push this off until we get further definition from the Secretary of State. But
Moving it on.
you know, I don't want the town to get sued because we choose the person that.
But we
you
already
know,
got, we already got guidance
Right, we got
from-
guidance from the Secretary of State already. We got, you know, I'm like,
So-
I don't know why it's different. That's my question. Why is Bud Finch saying something different than somebody else in the well, I don't even know. It could have been Bud Finch for all I know. You know, is he telling one person one thing, somebody else the other? You know, it's been known to happen.
I would like to make a motion that we.
We still have a motion on the table, but go ahead, we're discussing. So tell me what you're thinking.
Why are we
what your
finishing up
motion-
first?
Tell me, we have a motion.
I would move that we implement the will of the voters and we appoint Brent Tweed with the highest vote total.
No, we're not
to
doing
the
that.
seat.
That-
And then we also contact the Secretary of State and we ask about what needs to be done in the event of an election error and a ballot error.
I think we do.
Because it is very different than a vacancy where someone resigns.
I would,
And I don't see any problem with that, because this committee is probably not gonna meet again for,
there is a huge
Months.
problem
Yeah.
with that, because
Yeah.
there's a huge problem with that, because if we appoint somebody now and then go back and find out we're doing it right in the first place,
yeah.
Point of order, could you appoint somebody, could you pick someone tonight, given that we've gone through this whole process, contingent upon the legal opinion from the state?
why?
Legal
why?
confirmation.
Why,
Just a
if
confirmation
we're
of the
going to
process.
do it,
I'm just saying, just a confirmation from the state that the process you used was valid from the state. That's it.
Because we wanna make sure that we're implementing democracy correctly, and we wanna implement the will of
Well,
the
if that's what you wanna
voters.
do, then we
And that-
shouldn't vote at all. We
right,
should make
that's-
sure
that's why
everything's
I'm
in line, if that's what really
talking-
wants to happen, if that's what y'all really wanna do.
right, we just don't do it.
Then it doesn't make sense to vote anybody if we're gonna be like, we're gonna vote them and then be like, just
Right.
kidding, it was done wrong, we have to do it again.
Exactly.
We might as well get the clarification we need to make everybody feel better about making this decision. And if we have to do it again, then we have to do it again. I mean, everybody here,
To hear statements from everybody again, we'll consider the
correct.
same.
And everybody wants to make sure that we're doing it right.
Here, so we don't need to hear statements again. We
Right.
can just call another
Right.
meeting to vote.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it.
People can come and see.
I'm,
Yep.
What about the voters though?
Does-
Because the voters won't, the voters,
go ahead, Jim. I
10
don't know
other
if they
people
can't.
could show up that didn't hear the statements, and now
I
they're
appreciate-
completely out of.
I know, I appreciate that, sir.
Voters'
I appreciate that, sir. I know, we did have public comment though, and I don't want to be disrespectful or anything, but, you know, we're just trying to get through this meeting right now. I understand, but we had public comment, that's all I'm saying.
Does anybody have any insight as to how long it would take to get clarification?
I don't.
What
I
is,
mean, it doesn't, right.
what is
We could always meet again just.
It wouldn't be months,
That's
you
it,
know?
and that's it. We've heard everybody, like, if we have a meeting
It
next
shouldn't
week,
take that long, but
we
what
could,
is,
we
what is
could,
today's date?
seventh?
April seventh? Because it feels a lot more like January sixth in here, people trying to have an insurrection, trying to overturn the will of the
Okay.
people, overturn the election.
So what are we
results.
thinking then? Cause I think we either need to vote or vote that we're gonna,
right, I mean, that would be my proposal is I would withdraw my motion if we decided we weren't gonna vote at all until we got further clarification.
Right, so
I think
withdraw
we
your
need
motion.
confirmation in writing.
yes.
Right, exactly.
Probably
That's-
should be done by the town clerk or the town administrator.
That's, yeah, I mean, I would contact
me to
Lori
hear?
to say,
Okay.
Lori, get this in writing.
I agree.
From the Secretary of State's office.
And then we would meet we would come in, vote,
Yep.
and
Be done.
You could do it by
I'm gonna
email.
schedule it for next Thursday.
No,
All
we
right.
can't do it by email.
Alright,
Can't
well,
vote by email?
I'll make a motion, I make a motion.
Yeah.
We're in a
has-
motion.
he has
You
to re-
can't
he
make
has to
another
change it.
You
motion.
just withdraw it?
I didn't withdraw it yet. We're still discussing it.
When you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, we're trying to get through this meeting. I'm sorry, but public comment is not open right now, please. Be respectful, I'm trying to be respectful as well. You're putting me in a hard situation right now, ma'am, please.
Okay, I'm not trying to.
Thank
do
you.
All right, so yes, I agree that we should get it in writing.
Bingo.
And that way we have it, you know,
Yep.
it's like, instead of Lori telling us one thing and getting, I mean, we got the agreement from the town lawyer, that's in writing to me. But I don't have, basically she had a conversation with somebody at the Secretary of
Correct.
State's office. And then Mary said she had a conversation as well.
Yep.
So whether it's the same person, different person, whatever, I have no idea. So I will withdraw my motion and present that we do not vote on a replacement candidate tonight. So I make a new motion. We don't vote on a candidate until we get clarification in writing from the Secretary of State's office on direction of how to
Proceed.
fill our vacancy.
Can I just add one thing? I think we should, in writing,
He did
In
say
writing.
that.
no, write to them the circumstances exactly in writing,
Mhm.
then get it back from them in writing.
Sure.
So they know
Yeah.
the full circumstances.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. Not a telephone call.
Right. But I'll have like Lori do it or whatever.
I'll second the
I guess,
motion.
Right, that would be the right thing to do, have Lori do it.
She is the town clerk.
She's the town clerk, right? Yep, okay, just. double
Send a
checking.
tape of this whole meeting to the state too.
Yeah, come have fun.
I don't think
he wants to watch it.
Okay,
As
so,
part of that motion, then we're just gonna meet, vote, and no public comment?
Correct.
We've heard what we've heard?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, maybe vote, it depends on what the response is.
Well, yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
They may be-
take action depending,
We'll
Yeah.
take action based on.
based
your-
on our confirmation. I like it.
And the vote will be a roll call vote? We will not do it in secret?
I guess that depends on what the Secretary of State's office says, isn't it?
yep. Oh. We're getting that's what we're gonna get clarification on how to move forward. Mhm. Thank you, I appreciate your comment.
No, it was presented as an election mishap. That's how, because I was recognized right before, it was recognized right before the election. So, okay.
All in favor of John's motion? Aye. Those opposed? Those abstained?
I'm abstaining, we already had an election.
Thank you. Okay,
Robert Kelly
so we'll reconvene. I'll try to make an appointment for next week. We'll try to book
we
it for
wanna
next
do the
week.
rest of our
I
agenda?
don't, no, I don't.
Can we at
want to.
least tentatively
should.
schedule for next Thursday?
We need,
No, I don't. Yeah,
we need to go over our who's chairing, we need to.
next Thursday, does next Thursday work for everybody at 7 o'clock in this town? I mean, in the conference room, if I can get Kelly to book it for us?
We don't even know if we're gonna have a result by then,
Well,
especially if we're doing it in writing.
But if we do, let's have it already on the book, and if come Wednesday.
It doesn't matter.
I think we should pencil
John,
it
I
in.
think we need to, because a lot of us have a lot of meetings.
I think we should pencil
It's
it
gonna
in.
be hard to schedule.
Let's pencil, I think we should
We
pencil
don't get a
in.
response from the Secretary of State's office.
Cancel it on Wednesday. Schedule it for Thursday.
I
If we don't have a
agree.
response by
We haven't
Wednesday.
adjourned our meeting, Mary. Mary,
Thank you,
we have
ma'am.
not adjourned our meeting. Thank you.
Uh,
But
I
we
think-
have not adjourned our
I
meeting.
think we should pencil in for Thursday. If we can, if we need to cancel it because we don't have anything, then I'll reach out to everybody. I'm also gonna reach everybody tonight because I got a new email.
We need to do new
14.
officers.
Okay, yeah.
Well, let's figure out
Let's-
is everybody good for next Thursday at
Thursday at
7 if we could
7?
do it?
Yeah,
And we have an answer?
yeah,
I'm in.
right. I don't,
Hmm?
should we not do the, right,
It doesn't matter, because nothing's gonna change between now and then.
right.
This is a school board meeting. You need a rep, or what?
We don't even start the meeting without electing officers because we don't have a chair to run the meeting, so.
No, you need a.
The superintendent runs the meeting.
The
until we
select
elect
board
a chair.
always, chair stays chair until they
Right,
elect.
well, no, that's
Need to make
correct,
sure.
right. We should be
But we don't have
electing a chair.
another seat for, like, our seat's not filled to make those elections, right?
No, we can still do it.
You technically can, but
Okay.
again, the board can decide right now whether we want to wait till we have a full board
Right.
to elect our elected positions for this board. We as
Right?
a board can decide that.
Or everybody can,
Right.
Or we can also decide right now that we aren't going to wait for a full board and assign positions.
okay,
Remember, it's a majority rule.
right.
I'll make that motion then that we elect
So-
officers.
It doesn't matter, however you want to do it.
All right, so y'all wanna elect officers now?
I would move that we elect officers
All right.
now, and my personal opinion is Michelle and John are doing a great job, so if they're still willing.
That was easy.
No, like in all sincerity, I really respect you guys, the way you manage the meetings fairly, respectfully, and I think they're very well managed. So my motion is we keep things as is.
I second that.
Sorry. If you're so willing.
I mean, I am willing, it's just a lot, I really appreciate, I really appreciate everybody's input, like, on everything, even if our opinions, like, clash, I'll be happy to be the chair.
Yay!
If-
That was easy.
I'll do vice chair.
Yeah, I'll
again.
only
I
do it
just
if he
don't
does
wanna-
vice chair.
I'll do vice chair again if that's. There you go.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you for listening tonight,
All right.
and making good decisions. Well, thank you for serving.
Cheers, Gene.
Jean.
Thanks,
I think
Gene.
we need to vote on it.
Yes. Let's vote on that motion, shall we?
Do we have someone second?
I'll say, well,
Tom
I
did.
thought somebody seconded.
Okay,
Tom
Tom
seconded.
seconded.
Yeah, I heard a
Right.
second.
If I understood that Michelle was chair and John is vice chair.
That was my
Yes,
intention.
okay, then I
Yep.
seconded, yeah.
All right, all those in favor of the motion?
Sure, I guess. Why am I voting?
All right.
Who are we sticking on committees?
Right,
There's
that's the next
CIP.
piece.
I'm gonna wait on that since the
No,
person who gets appointed could.
We should do it because you said you need somebody
We do
on,
need facilities,
Right,
but they
'cause
won't
Mi-
meet next week.
because Michael's thing.
Yeah, facilities committee needs a person, but they're not gonna
So-
meet next week.
So
Should we just vote on the facilities
I
then?
will not be doing that again.
Okay, all right, I was gonna ask you if you were interested still or not.
I will not, I'm actually on the planning board as well, I'm an alternate on the planning board, and they take that position, the alternates very seriously, they actually put me on the CIP committee for the planning board. So I'm doing that, plus the big thing for not wanting to do that is I've done it 3 years in a row, we need a fresh voice there, if there's gonna be anybody else.
Can I just ask a little bit about the position, like how often they meet and things like that?
I have to use the
I don't-
bathroom.
Facilities
Excuse me.
committee is, reconstituting, so there'll be some new people on it, and they, as a committee, will decide. So they will decide as a committee how often they meet and when they meet. In the past, they met right after school at 3:30. Do they sometimes do it in the evening?
At 2:30 or 3, which is another reason I couldn't do that anymore, because I have a volunteer position in the daytime, and I'm not done with that until 4 days a week.
So they have a hard time getting teachers to serve on it if they don't do it within an hour or two after school. But the committee itself will decide once they,
So the facilities committee is just the school?
Yes.
Okay,
it
it's not the
has,
town, you know, side
it's
of it.
a committee of the school board, so it has school board representatives as administrators, as teachers, as 2 community members. So we already, we voted last night to seat the 2 community members. And it's, in the past, always had a budget committee.
What day do they usually meet?
It had been on Wednesdays or Thursdays?
Thursday, because that.
Yeah, because it was right before this sometimes.
Okay,
It's usually after school though, like 3:30.
Right, but it was like
I'll put my name in.
on a day that we had budget.
well, there you go.
Yep.
All right, so.
Move on, next.
So is there anybody
don't
else
let him change his
interested in doing
mind.
that?
Tom, you don't wanna go for that?
All right,
no?
I'll make a motion to
enough stuff.
nominate,
You wanna talk about that?
Tom LeVey as
Try
the
again?
school facilities, representative.
I'll second that.
We're gonna do it again.
All those in favor of the motion?
Which is the motion?
That Tom LeVey is and this, yeah,
Make sure you're not making me.
you're next.
I was gonna nominate you for chair.
Yeah. Aw, Tom.
No, those meetings go, they would go too long then.
This takes up enough of my time.
All right, so we did school facilities.
We don't really need transportation right now because there's nothing.
All right,
So we did the SAU transition that I've been doing, and I'm fine with doing that
All
unless,
right.
unless somebody really wants to do it.
That should be wrapping up, right?
It should be
Yeah.
wrapping up, yeah.
It shouldn't really affect next year's.
Right,
budget,
right,
so-
we should be done before budget season anyway.
all right.
Where's this, where's the
Well, then we
superintendent?
nominate you.
Well, then we nominate
Nominate John.
John for the SAU transition.
Second.
Second, all in favor of this? Whoop, whoop, whoop.
More work for you.
I like your style, Sandra. Get it done.
All right, CIP, I did CIP last time, I'm happy to do it again if anyone else wants to do it, capital improvement, we forecast and budgets,
Is that
Be on that
is
committee,
that at the
Tom?
school as well, or is that town?
No.
town.
So, Michelle, could we defer that one until we seat the new member? Because
Sure.
depending on who it is, they might be well suited for that.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll do that next time. So school,
And that committee's not gonna meet till October anyway, so it's,
right,
Well, that's when we start meeting.
well, that's when the CIP starts too.
so is that all of them? All the committees,
Um,
school, CIP, planning, transportation, which is not gonna do, SAU. That's it,
Think
right?
So,
I should've brought my paper, but I didn't.
We're wrapped up. on
All right.
things. John, I was looking at the, not to drag this back out, but I was looking at the email chain and like, this was identified back in February 18th. Like, how were they not able to correct the ballot in that amount?
They already printed the ballot.
February.
They printed a ballot before February 18th?
It was after,
They ordered them probably though.
it was.
Yeah.
After
it was
deliberative is when they
after,
ordered.
February 18th?
This says,
Thank you, Lorraine.
Oh, it's February 17th. Thank you for your explanation. I will call the SOS office tomorrow for guidance.
So,
I think
yeah, so
either
that
it
was
would be
on
an
our,
appointment or a write-in then opt to fill the spot.
After the deliberatives is when they order the ballots for printing.
yeah, they order them, right? It was after the period closed.
Because they have to, they need them
Couldn't someone
for,
just take a little pen and change
absentee
the 3 to a 4 on every thousands of ballots?
they need the absentee ballots in advance.
Oh.
Do we have any other business we'd like to discuss tonight before we wrap things up?
The Board of Selectmen is going to be adding a building committee for the town to go over the town buildings, like the place behind us here, and other facilities, buildings we have in town, about projects and expenditures that might occur, or tearing down buildings that we don't use. It will be a position that it's for anybody. We're looking at maybe Gary Anderson being the head of that committee, for just brainstorming ideas to bring in front of the select board. So it's not gonna be really a, time-consuming committee.
How much does it pay?
Well,
same
due
as
to budget restraints, Tom, it doesn't pay nothing.
It pays the same as this one.
How many spots on that, John?
We could have up to 5, it could be 3. I mean, it's kind of whoever's interested and wants to come in and
That's kind of
brainstorm and volunteer. It's like a brainstorming committee is really what it is, you know.
How often does it meet?
Again, it's gonna be up to the guy running it, and we're
Judge.
hoping it's gonna be Gary Anderson, who will tell you when the meetings will be at.
We're talking like monthly,
Maybe
every
once a
other
month, maybe once a month, maybe, it depends on what's ahead, what's there, you know. CIP, there's people that brought up that, again, I'm not spreading rumors here, so don't get yourself in the panties, well, but some people were talking about maybe the police department needs a new facility down the road. Now, that's an expense, but we have to find a place to put it, build, you know, so maybe that'll be a discussion, I don't know. This building back here, you know, is a infested trap, that's attached here. What do we do with it? Do we just keep letting it rot? Or do we get rid of it all and clean up the space? That's another, you know, the renovation of the town hall, we renovation to happen for the SAU. But the main part of the building isn't,
Yeah, don't tear it down.
right, the other part of the building is really in not the greatest shape at all, but, historical. So, there's plenty of stuff like that to be, even the Grange building, even the old fire department building. What do we do with the town facility down there that we're using as our maintenance shed? You know, some say it's too small, it's not efficient for what we need. Do we build a new building down in the sand pit area? You know, I mean, these are all future.
You're on a roll, I like it.
Well, I'm just saying that these are things that are in a 10-year window or
Right,
15-year window.
Yeah.
Not saying they're done next year.
I know, I
But
know.
it's something that as this town grows, things need to change, it
Yeah.
needs to
Upgrade and, yeah.
upgrade, so how do we do it, where do we do it, what are plans for what we do? It's just discussion. So if we can get that foresight when those times come up, the town can be better prepared than starting off saying,
Right.
oh,
Yeah.
well, somebody thought about this 4 years
Absolutely.
ago.
So who do interested people send their applications?
You can send it to the board, but we're really pushing for Gary Anderson to be our, well, to start the project. We don't say do everything, that's why we're asking for people to volunteer,
There's nothing wrong with delegating.
so. But that's something just, since we're in the budget and future expenditures.
Yep.
Thought that'd be something for you to let you know.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate that. Be on the lookout for a new email from me, because I got so much love from the town that I decided to create a new Nottingham email specifically for Nottingham things, so be on the lookout for that.
Can we get Nottingham at
So,
nottingham.gov?
so what John and I have done, or John did it first, it's mking.nottingham@gmail. It's not anything official, but if it gets passed out to the public, it's not like
Good thinking.
my personal.
King, Nottingham,
I'll send out an email too, yes, it's
Okay, thank you,
mking,
thank you, thank you.
yep, I will.
It's like mine, except it's MK instead of JW.
Alright, anybody else?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
You're not supposed to second
Oh.
motions.
Oh, sorry. I'll second.
I second.
Thanks for being eager.
I am.
Right,
Second motions? Not
they
supposed to.
shouldn't, right, the chair shouldn't
You can second
make or
motion.
second motions.
You should be calling for the motion, it doesn't make a
Right, you call-
Yes.
You into it, Tom.
Okay, all right, thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you guys for coming in.
You guys sure about this?
Actually, you know what?
Yeah, are you
It's
sure?
better. Thank you for sticking around.
The entire time.
Actually, I'm impressed by all three of you sticking around after because that shows commitment.
Yeah,
Let's see what happens when it goes to 1 in the morning.
yeah.
Who
And
will
I know
jump
there's
on
like a
board?
lot of stuff going around, like, on social media and stuff, but, I mean, we take the time to come and do this, and we were all together last year, and I just wanna say that I really appreciate everybody's time and commitment that it takes, because we all have jobs, we all have other things going on, other commitments, and, you know, we all chose to take an interest in the town that we live in, so, thank you guys.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get hate mail, Michelle?
I got a lot of mail.
Wasn't hate mail.
It wasn't hate, there